Alrighty boyos, today we're gonna be reviewing Jetline at Gröna Lund in Stockholm, Sweden. I just visited Gröna Lund 1 week ago when I'm recording this, and well, it was a pretty good park. This park is full of charm and great atmosphere, and of course a bunch of great rides. And Jetline is primarily known to be the best ride, or at least one of the best rides in the park. At least that's the common opinion. However, I'm here to tell you why they're wrong. They're not wrong at all. But my opinion might not be just the same as everybody else's. That's to say, immediately, I do really like Jetline. I think this is a great roller coaster overall, but I definitely have some nitpicks with it, and I'm gonna go through those with you today. First of all though, Jetline, that's a cool name, right? Well, it basically means like a jetliner or an airliner, or, you know, a broom plane, and it basically has this futuristic theme. It's really cool, and it's kind of like Futurama or maybe the Jetsons. It's really cool. There's not a lot of theming, but it's very good, especially with the colors and the diner station. The coaster was actually named Berg- och Dalbanan at some point, which just means the roller coaster, but that was only for like 2 seasons in the early 2000s. It's made by Zierer, which is of course a well-renowned family coaster manufacturer, as well as BHS, who's helped manufacturing a few rides like Olympia Looping, and of course the coaster is designed by Schwarzkopf. Most people refer to this coaster as a Schwarzkopf roller coaster, and that's not wrong either. It is a Schwarzkopf design. Track is very Schwarzkopf-ish. The official manufacturer is Zierer and BHS. Me personally, I just call it a Zierer Schwarzkopf. If you want to get real technical, Mauer rides also did some modifications to the first drop in 1997. It's complicated. Basically, only 3 of this specific model were ever built. There's of course this one, Jetline. Then there's Lisebergbanan in Liseberg in Gothenburg, and then there was BMRX, which then became Nightmare at Camelot in the UK, which unfortunately is no longer in operation. To compensate for it though, Jetline has an almost exact copy of Nightmare's layout. It's pretty much a clone except for the first drop and the part right after it. But basically there are only 2 of these now, and they're both Swedish, which is kind of funny to think about, really. It was built in 1988, and it was the park's 2nd coaster at the time. It was also their first real thrill coaster at the park. The stats of Jetline are actually pretty solid. It's a 105 feet tall coaster with 2,624.7 feet of track and a top speed of 55.9 miles an hour, making it the fastest coaster in the park, along with Monster, the B&M invert. It has a total of 3 mid-course brake runs, which means that it can run a lot of trains, and when I was there, it ran 2 and 3 trains. The operations of this coaster are pretty damn solid. They set their trains out pretty fucking fast, and I think part of the reason for that is because this is pretty much the only coaster in the park where they don't check your restraints. They just don't. I don't know why. I hope there is some sort of safety thing that they can see on like a screen, because yeah, they don't check your restraints. You can get a lot of room in this coaster. So you know, if you like chaos and feeling in danger, this is a great ride. Not that there is anything dangerous with this ride, you're gonna be fine. I'm pretty sure they do actually look at your restraint, they just don't pull on it, so yeah. The trains are pretty small. They only have 7 rows, which is 14 riders per train, but again, with these great operations, the queue line still moves pretty fast. It never had a long line when I was there, and that was over 2 days on a weekend. It's also the longest coaster ride in the park with 58 seconds of ride time. That's from the lift hill to the final brake run. And another thing I gotta note before I get into the layout itself is this coaster is beautiful. In the recent years, they got it repainted. I think they did it along with Wildemusen, which is the wild mouse it interacts with. It has this beautiful cyan color scheme that is just really freaking, I mean, it's beautiful. It has one of the most beautiful colors I've ever seen on a coaster, and the track itself is looking really good because it's this huge compact layout. It also looks really cool, especially the way it interacts with the wild mouse. That's just amazing. And when of course comes to the layout, well, you start out with the thing that it's oddly known the most for. I think this is probably why the ride is somewhat famous, and that's because of its curved lift hill. It has a curved chain lift hill, which is quite weird, but it's because it doesn't use a traditional coaster styled chain lift hill. The chain is an actual chain. I'm speaking medieval sort of chain. That's why it works. You get up to the 105 feet, and then you drop into this twisted drop where you tilt to the right and then down into this very long drop. The drop is not steep at all. There's no air time or whatnot, but if you sit in the back, you are going to get a little bit of laterals in the turn in the beginning, but not too much. It's also a very janky drop. It's shaped kind of oddly, but honestly, I love it. At the bottom of this drop, you're going to get a lot of force. This is a very shallow drop at the bottom, even though it's not very steep. It just changes direction very fast, and you're gonna get pushed hard into your seat. And when you mix that with the tunnel and the steam and everything, that just makes it a lot better. It's almost disorientating. You then head over Twister, which is the wooden coaster, into this big, well, I wouldn't call it an overbank. Okay, this overbank is very underbanked. It is not banked enough. Okay, you get a lot of laterals in this turn. You get pushed out to the left side a fair bit, and it's very sustained as well. And almost a little janky on the fun side. It's not the strongest laterals I've ever felt on a coaster at all, but like they're really fun. It's a really good turn. After that, you just cruise up into the second mid-course. There are not really any forces up here. However, you are transferring into the second drop. And the second drop, that's the best part of the ride. It doesn't matter where you sit on the train. This is the best part of the ride. You start out with this crazy drop, which in the front row is going to get a little bit of hang time, as well as a little bit of laterals. It's very fun. But in the back, you're going to get whipped through this. You're going to get a lot of good laterals, and you're going to get floater airtime down the drop. And at the bottom of the drop, well, I'd say that definitely feels like the most forceful anything in the park. You hit about 4.5 Gs here. It feels like more. It feels like more than that. But that's where you hit, and it's sustained. The bottom of this drop, or rather this valley, is just very forceful, and it's just so fun. It really makes you go like, wow, cool. After that, you head upwards again, and then you go around a small turn into the second mid-course brake run. Again, not really anything interesting into that mid-course either. Then you hit the first of two 540-degree helixes, and I'm gonna say the same thing for both helixes. They're okay. This is why I was kind of let down with Jetline. I think it's a great coaster, but I expected both of these coasters to be more forceful than they were. Don't get me wrong, both of these helixes have force. They're definitely not forceless. You definitely feel somewhat pushed into your seat throughout them, but I don't think it's more than like 2.5 Gs at most. It's not a lot. You feel it, but it doesn't do anything. You're not really gonna get even close to getting a gray out in them. And you can actually kind of see that because they're not very banked either. The only difference between these two helixes is just that the entrance to the second one gives you a jolt to the left after the third mid-course. That's actually pretty fun. You get like hammered to the left. I quite like that. After the second helix, you head into a fun overbank, then into this final turn here that has a little bit of laterals actually, but not much force. Then a quick bunny hop into the brakes, which in the front and also a little bit on the back gives some quick flagector airtime. It's very brief though. It's like one of the shortest airtime moments I've ever felt, but it's there. I mean, it's fun. And then the brakes also hit fairly hard, which is of course always fun as well. So that's basically the layout of Jetline. And to sum it up, it's really good. It's really fun, but it's not super impressive though for the most part. Basically, the first half is very good, and the second half is nothing more than just fun. But it's still a great ride. I like the charm that it has, the layout itself is pretty fun, the trains are great, the location is fantastic, and well, is it smooth as well? Somewhat. The thing about Jetline is, I wouldn't call it rough. If you saw my vlog, I did call it rough then, but I wouldn't actually say now that it is rough. I would say that it is janky, it gives some jolts, you definitely get thrown a little from side to side and feel some bumps, mainly because the track shaping is just not super well engineered. I know I'm gonna get a lot of flack for that because Schwarzkopf, one of the greatest designers ever, and he is. But the track shaping is kind of wonky, and that just gives it a lot of jolts throughout the ride, which are not uncomfortable at all. It is not painful, it's very fun, and I like that it has it. The only problem I have with it is that this is the kind of roughness that can also give me personally a headache. Rides like this and Thor's Hammer and some other rides I've done as well have a very specific rattle or joltiness to them that just manages to give me a bit of a headache. Very few rides do it, but this is one of them. The headache is very slight. It doesn't bother me at all. It doesn't like dropping in my rankings, but I wanted to mention it. And that, as well as the layout, the theming and everything, basically sums up my thoughts and opinions on Jetline at Gröna Lund. Basically, what used to be their flagship roller coaster, not anymore. Monster is probably their flagship ride right now. It's a great roller coaster. I think it's a tad overrated maybe, but again, I don't really like the terms underrated and overrated, but I still really like it, and I mean, it has a good spot in my rankings. So yeah, to sum it up, smooth but janky, forceful but forceless, beautiful and charming, old as shit, and generally a great ride in the middle of Stockholm. That's basically been it for this review. Let me know what you think of Jetline in the comments if you've ridden it, of course, or if you just want to ride it, let me know what you think beforehand, I guess. Something like that. I like comments.